welcome back to the class, everyone. Just when we thought we were done with our farming prep guides, CG decided to drop the one, the only, Leviathan and its requirements. So much in the same respect that we've been going through every single Galactic Legend, Giant Luke, Gas, as well as Profundity and Executor, looking through all the requirements and saying, hey, we know that you need to gear all these characters up to be able to unlock the big bad thing that's coming, but in reality, there's so many relics and so many characters you have to do this with, there ends up becoming this correct order in which we should do that so you don't get stuck with a lot of the really crummy requirements right away. And if we can focus in and hone in on what is really the best, we can get our best bang for our buck over time, not just when the ship eventually does drop. So again, we don't really have the kit for the Leviathan. We've been told it's going to be very good, but as of today, like a few hours ago, we do know the requirements, and what we're going to do is we're going to talk about each of them and in what order we should be doing them. And I'm actually going to not add in any other characters that are not really true requirements, and there's a few reasons for this, but first and foremost, it's because we want to unlock the ship, and I don't want to sit here and tell people, oh, you need to go up to like Sith Marauder or like Treya or Jedi Knight Revan or whatever. In the meantime, well, I guess you have to have Jedi Knight Revan because of Malik, but in the meantime, because that'll slow you down from being able to get to your first event as fast as possible. And if this event is anything like Executors and Profundities, and I believe it's going to be, we have every reason to believe it is, then the sooner we start farming this, the less crystals and less agony we will have to go through. So that being said, let's just go ahead and get into that. What are the first characters you should make sure you could farm in regards to Leviathan? So I know I said we were only going to be directly doing requirements for the Leviathan, and the first character we're talking about is Malgus, who is not a direct requirement. If you go on to the forums and you list out the 9 characters that are there that you need at whatever relic level, Malgus's name does not appear. However, you cannot unlock the Leviathan if he is locked, and the reason why is because his ship, the Fury, which isn't unlockable by the way yet, we're going to get it through the last conquest, assuming you've been maxing all those crates and whatnot. You have to have him unlocked to be able to unlock Fury to be able to unlock Leviathan. So he doesn't have to be R7 or R8 or R9 or anything super fancy like that, but you have to have him. So if you're going to have him, you want to have him at least Relic 7, if not at a higher relic level. So he ends up becoming very important, because if you can't get him, you can't get the ship, you can't get anything. And also, he probably just is the best character in all these requirements, just because he within himself is just really, really stinking good. The next 2 characters we need to kind of talk about together, and the reason why is because they are Relic 9 requirements. Both Malik and Darth Revan are Relic 9 requirements. So very similar to when we were talking about Jedi Master Luke and talking about Wampa, or when we were talking about Lord Vader talking about Gas. One of the reasons why we have to really prioritize these characters first to be farmed, because if you don't have access to Relic 9 materials, then there's no point here. Like, there is no point in going after the Leviathan if you can't get Malik and Darth Revan to Relic 9, because you don't either have the droid brains, because your guild either isn't there in Territory Wars, or because you don't have enough of the salvage to be able to build up to. So that is something really important to pay attention to. Not to mention, these guys, out of all the requirements, really just get a lot of bang for their buck when it comes to the high relic levels. And one of the reasons why is because if we look under Darth Malgus's kit in GAC, which is really where they're going to shine the most, Sith Empire allies have 50% mastery. Why is that important? Because mastery scales together with your relic levels. That's where all of it comes from. So having an R9 Malik and an R9 Darth Revan isn't just cool because they're R9 and can do more damage and tank more stuff, but because in addition to all the normal stats that come from leveling them up from relics, they're getting an added boosted mastery bonus from Malgus himself that's just going to make them even tougher. So honestly, as much as I don't love to see Relic 9 requirements for, anything, these 2, they're going to come back to help a lot. It's going to be significantly better than having to say R8 Cassian Andor, who is an okay character, but these 2 are going to reap the benefits significantly more. Again, even without unlocking the Leviathan. So they need to be the first priority, because if you can't really get them, either because of the high relic levels or because Malgus is a conquest character, you don't even bother with this. Like, that's just pretty much the end of it. Next up, we're going to be moving on to our A tier. And now these three characters, they all kind of fit in a similar category. And maybe we could pump Sortie up here too. But they are good characters, even maybe pivotal characters for their team. But that's just kind of the thing. You have to have their surrounding team for them to be any good. Sith Trooper really wants to be around a First Order team, possibly even a certain types of Sith teams he can be okay. Bastila Shan really wants Jedi Knight Revan, which you should at least have unlocked, because you need a Jedi Knight Revan to unlock Malak, so he's at least gear 12. And then as well as Sith Empire Trooper. They're all needed at about Relic 7, if I remember correctly. And by the way, we did get confirmation in the not in the patch notes, but down in the comments on the requirements. It is Bastila Shan that is required for Leviathan, not Bastila Shan Fallen. And there's actually kind of a really wonky... I know it seems very weird and it seems like super anti-lore accurate, but it actually makes more sense because I think they're trying to redo or like re-show the battle at the very beginning of KOTOR, so spoilers for that game of 20 years ago, where there was actually like a Bastila Shan involved with like the Ebon Hawk and Darth Revan, and anyways, we don't need to get into it, but she is a requirement and she's very good. Probably doesn't need to be R7, but Leviathan is kind of telling her she has to be. So these are three that are really nice to prioritize. It's just going to come down to whether or not do you have the surrounding team. They're situationally good, whereas Darth Revan, Malak, and Malgus, you put them together, and even if you don't have Bastila Shan Fallen or Talon or whatever, like they're still gonna do lots of really stinking good stuff, whereas these three are a little bit more conditional. The Relic levels are a little bit easier to stomach, though. That is nice. The Relic 7, while it's not super accessible, it's more accessible than Relic 9. Next up, we're going to get up to our B tier characters, and again, when we're talking about tiers, we're not just saying that Sortie is by all means a worse character than Set. Like, that's not what we're doing here. What we're trying to do is develop a good order in which to farm them to be able to get the most of what we can get. And the reason why Sortie is all the way down in the B tier category is because it's a little bit hard to put together her team, if that makes sense. It's very roster dependent on what you have. Number one, you have to have T3 geared up. He's kind of pretty pivotal team. Like, I don't have T3 or really Sortie geared up for that matter. And then you need to make sure that your other droids aren't in their previous home. So one of the two biggest characters that go with Sortie that are really great are R2 and BB-8. That's awesome. A lot of people can do that. But if you don't have Rey, typically your R2 and your BB-8, they go with JTR. So she just becomes a little bit of like situational plus. So you can't have her. She can be good. She can do a lot of things. But at the same time, I think my opinion, it's better to kind of put her off towards the end, unless you have the team for her. Or maybe you already have her R7 because she had a datacron. So in which case, this whole point is kind of pointless for you. But anyways, yeah, so Sortie definitely, for me, falls into that kind of B tier level where she is we're going to get her later on. And Sith Assassin, most of you are probably thinking the opposite right now, Sith Assassin. Like, why in the world is she this far up on the list? Like, she should be rock bottom. She should be the worst. And Sith Assassin actually is not bad under Darth Malgus. Number one, she has a few things going for her, that she is both Sith and Sith Empire. That coincides a lot with Malgus's kit. He does demand everyone really be Sith across the board, but there's a lot of extra bonus in there where Sith Empire helps a lot. And then just what some of this does for the whole team is really, really cool. So it's about all debuffs from Sith Assassin and gains stealth and foresight for 2 turns. She gains speed up and tenacity up. Sith allies gain 12% turn meter for each buff on her. So she gets her own buffs here. And then in addition to that, she can have, I believe it's crit damage up, as well as the specific buff that Darth Malgus has himself. So you can end up generating a lot of turn meter for the whole team with her there, and just kind of close those cycles of Darth Malgus, increasing cooldowns, and then having the fear wave of Bastila Shan Fallen, as well as Darth Revan. This is probably going to be a little bit more important for me, because I really like Talon, who's my current 5th, for Darth Malgus to be with Traya. It kind of works out in a way that is very beneficial to me once she actually is, you know, geared and relic up where she needs to be. Her basic is a basic, so that's kind of fun. Yeah, so it makes up the majority of our B tier characters. And then last, and definitely least, and there's going to be a little bit of hate here, so, you know, bear with me. Maul doesn't really do much. Every once in a while, his leadership will really start to shine. I'm Zeta poor, I guess. I was never able to put this on. I'm not a day one player. I wasn't there when Zetas first came out, so I didn't really get to experience that. And he just doesn't have a team. Like, there are 3? Yeah, there are like 3 really good Sith teams between Sith Empire, and Traya. He really just doesn't go on any of them. There isn't really any plug-and-play viability. He doesn't get to go play with Starkiller. He's just... I mean, the only real advantage here is that if you do him, it's a requirement of Sith Eternal out of the way. Like, that's that's the biggest bonus here, is that he's really only 3 relic levels for anyone who has Sith Eternal unlocked. So that's nice, but at the same time, you might as well leave him for last. Even if he's this close, just leave him for last. He's not actually going to make your roster any better. He's not going to really improve what you're doing. He's just kind of there. But anyways, moving on to HK. So HK has gone back and forth a lot when it comes to viability. I really do not like him on a Malgus team at all, specifically because he's not Sith. We talked about this recently in a video about how much that ruins Malgus' synergy, because Malgus demands that everyone be a Sith, or he doesn't pre-taunt, he doesn't get health and protection bonuses, he doesn't get extra speed, the doubt doesn't spread, it doesn't turn to fear. There's a lot of issues with putting HK on a Malgus team. So he doesn't fit in there. And I guess you can bring him up for a Darth Revan team, but like, I guess my next question is, why are you separating Darth Revan from Malgus? And I guess if you're a smaller account and you need 2 teams, then that's probably excusable. But is that, I feel like the overlap for the people who are in that bucket and the people who are working on Leviathan, like the Venn diagram there is very small. Like, it is super small, the amount of people that need that amount of teams and are also going for, you know, the most end game content currently in existence. But if that's you, go ahead and gear up HK before a lot of other people. But for me, he just really doesn't have a lot of use. Yeah, I guess you could throw him with Sortie or with Afra, but he doesn't. I have not been impressed with him in either. At best, I would say he's filler for those teams. He's not really one of the big crucial parts. And this isn't really like meant to be main to HK. Like, he's a great character in lore and whatnot, I know that, but CG's just done some really weird, they've done him dirty. They reworked his lead, got rid of all the good leader components. Like, it's very little now, and when they did that, they're like, we're gonna make him work perfectly with Darth Revan, and that was like really cool for a few months. And then Relics came out and Marauder became insanely better. So, and Marauder also became required for a Galactic Legends. So yeah, HK really just he's been very homeless for a while, and he's been okay in a couple teams, but really not anything extraordinary. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you think about the concept of, really, we're not wanting to add anything about this because I want you guys to get to the Leviathan unlock as soon as possible so we don't get sidetracked, so you can save yourself crystals, save yourself a little bit of agony if this is a pain in the butt to beat in Fleet Arena. But until the next time, thank you guys for watching. Stay awesome.